Hello, this is Jessica Pettit here, and who do I have the pleasure of interviewing today?
Hi, Jessica. This is Lenora Billings-Harris. I'm Executive Director, CEO, all that good stuff of Ubuntu Global, which is a diversity and inclusion firm.
Excellent. And I like to say this up front, full disclosure, Lenora is someone I would consider a dear friend, but is also the first person I knew inside of an organization we both belong to, also past president of the National Speakers Association. She's the first person I ever met inside of the association that did diversity work. And it gave me the I can do this. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Great. So in these conversations, there's two concepts that I'm grappling with currently. And so I want to throw one of them each to you just to see how they land on you and what you think about them. So the first one is the concept of diversity dividend. So how this has been rolling around in my brain is when I talk to clients, it almost always goes down to like the bottom line and making money. So when I say diversity dividend to you, thinking about investing, action, and return, how does that land on you?
Well, it certainly does land from the bottom line perspective because, as you know in your own work, so many executives who may be thinking about doing this work really want to know, so what's in it for the organization? And so you do still, in 2018, have to spend a little bit of time explaining the business case. And so I come from a place of, here from a progressive perspective, here's what you gain by more women at the top, then it's proven that the organization will make more money, that kind of thing. And no matter which way I come to it, it's really all from a diversity of thought perspective. So when I think of diversity dividend, I also am talking about all of this is not about 6 of those, 5 of those, and 2 of those. It's about getting diversity of thought in the room and valuing that thought, so including that thought. But frankly, personally, where I'm coming from is when you have that diversity dividend, ultimately, when it's really done effectively and authentically, it improves the full community, not just the organization, but the whole community that organization exists in.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right, the other concept, and you can take this if it's applied to you or if you're bringing it to you, so is asterisk other duties assigned. So this is usually like the last line of a job description, so it's kind of something done to you. But there's also an element of if you're kind of the only one, you become the unofficial chair of an affinity group, or how you actually build your own community around your own identities. So asterisk other duties assigned. How's that land on?
Well, that's interesting. I haven't had that type of question before. And before I started my firm, even though I started it over 30 years ago, before that, I worked in corporate America. As my last position in corporate America was director of a division of a Fortune 100 company. And before that, I worked at the business school in the Executive Development Center at the University of Michigan. So the asterisk, additional duties, I always was the only one. I was usually not only the only African American or the only person of color, I was very often the only woman as well in many of those roles. And to your point, when you are the only one, you get used up and people get tired of that. They get asked too often to be that person. And in school environments, K through 12 or private school environments, what I have found is they may have one quote unquote diverse student, and that one student shows up in all their pictures so they can show some diversity. So that is not a good thing, actually. And it depends on the individual on how much they are going to want to play those roles. What I have come to know as a consultant and as a leader in various roles in our profession of professional speaking, yet again, I have been not the only woman, but I have been the first person of color in many of the roles that I have held. And I didn't get there because I was that person of color. They weren't stupid enough to put somebody not qualified in a role. So I fully understood that I was qualified to be in those roles, but I also realized that I was carrying additional weight. I won't call it burden, because it wasn't a burden, but additional weight that for those folks who'd never interacted with a person of color in a leadership role, that I was carrying the additional weight of the people I hope would follow me. Mm-hmm. And in some of those roles, I have seen that just my presence has enabled that to happen. So once I held those roles and I left, then slowly the barriers were starting to fall, because people fear what they don't know, and so they end up staying away from it. Now, again, I don't represent every Black person, I don't represent every woman, but when some folks who had no experience begin to have some, I think that opens the doors for others.
Yeah, and I like your distinction about carrying things that's not necessarily a burden, in that it makes me think of when we talk about Kimberly Crenshaw's work around intersectionality or simultaneity, is that you are a woman, often the only woman in the room, often the only person of color in the room, making you often the only woman of color in the room. It's all happening at the exact same time. And then where we think about like tokenization, I think the reason why it can be so exhausting is that you can be tokenized based on individual identities. So then like, it's a bonus that somebody holds all this, but it's extra exhausting that you are being forced to represent multiple groups instead of just being one person that's happening all at once.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
And I think that a piece that is added to that is for folks that have not experienced that role, they are totally oblivious that it's occurring. I think it's Michael Kimmel says, privilege is blind to those who have it. Right. And so when you are that person of difference, whatever it is, as you're interacting with others, very often they have no idea that you are carrying this extra weight.
Right. And a great example of this, and I think I'm going to showcase what my feelings were about you being inducted into the Hall of Fame this past year, but also I wanted to give you a platform to talk about one of the things I love about how you are able to express the importance of creating a training or education space that's without judgment, blame, and shame, but how that then also allows a space to uncover people's biases personally around talent management, the research that you've done, right? Like your approach to it very much comes from, I believe, choices that you've made in how to deal with that simultaneity and tokenization. So you were inducted, congratulations, into the Hall of Fame this past summer, and you're more than welcome. And what is fascinating to me is so many people's response was, oh, I thought she'd already gotten it, right? And what's fascinating to me about that is that you've had every single leadership position. You are a pillar in the profession of speaking regardless of topic or audience, let alone diversity speaking. So some people were like, oh, weird. I thought she already did it because she already does everything. But it is also the case that when everybody else who's still alive and was present lined up in the background, it was painfully obvious that you were the first woman of color that's still living, that I've seen on the stage. I know that there was at least one other woman of color that I never got to meet. Yes. So I don't want to give you credit that's not your credit.
Right.
But in my generation of members, and I've been a member for 15 years, the power of seeing that does open those doors. And then hear the echoes of, I thought she already got through those doors. That's how doors don't open.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about how you react and hold those spaces without blame, shame, judgment, so that people can kind of note that reality.
Yes. Well, in regards to the leadership positions I've held and the the recognition that I've received, and thank you for the shout out on being in the Speakers Hall of Fame, because it's still sinking in. It's still, it's like, oh my goodness, all these people I have admired for so long, and now I am in that group. So
Which
it's
is
still
amazing to
sinking
hear.
in.
Before we record, you're like, someone's on the phone from London, and now I'm off the phone. You're this international speaker, like, duh, of course you're in the Hall of Fame. But
I know, but for to me, I'm still just me, and I have realized over time the power that being on the platform with my other colleagues when I am the only African American or the only woman of color. And initially I didn't necessarily give it any thought in coming on the platform, but it is so obvious, to your point, it is so obvious that there are not more people in a profession where we go out and supposedly help so many organizations to do their work better. And as it relates to your work and mine, in organizations to help them recognize their biases and disrupt them. So these are the experts doing these things, yet it still exists within. And, that's just part of life. But when it comes to the no blame and shame, back when I started my firm, which I started my business in 1986, so, it's like light years ago. And I didn't start out doing diversity work. And way back then, they didn't even call it diversity and inclusion. It was just diversity. And they were barely calling it anything at all. And when I realized by 1989 or so that I really needed to specialize, because when I first started, I was delivering training, all types of management development training, because that was part of my background and it was easy to do. But my colleagues had said, you need to pick a lane, you need to become a specialist in an area. And they were telling me, you should specialize in diversity. And I would say, why? And they would say, well, because you're Black and female. And I thought, so not a good reason. That shouldn't be the main reason. But it also was happening when organizations were just starting to grapple with the fact that their workforce was not going to look the same as it had in the past. So I started looking at what other people were doing in this space from 1988 through 1994. Well, as I was saying, do I want to do this or not? And most of the time I came away with, no, I don't want to do this, because what I saw other people doing was, to me, the way it hit me was blaming and shaming. It was trying to make organizations, especially leaders in organizations, feel guilty about what they hadn't been doing in the past. Mm-hmm. And I realized that was so not my personality.
Or effective.
It clearly was not effective. And so it really took a while, and it took personal experiences. When you're looking for something, then it will appear. And it may have always been there, you just didn't see it before. Mm-hmm. And I started recognizing that some of my personal experiences, having nothing to do with my work, helped me realize that I needed to find my voice in this space. I needed to do this work, and I needed to do it in a way different than how I saw other people doing it. And so that brought me forward, because the way I approach it is right from the very beginning, helping people see we're all in this together. We all have, in today's terminology, we all have biases. If we're human, we can't not have a bias. However, the bias that doesn't make you a bad person. So once you can get people on board understanding that we all have this, but we can choose for those biases that are providing results different than what we want, we can choose to do things differently. And once I began to realize that, on top of my personal experiences, I was able then to over time, find my way of talking about this topic, introducing it to people, helping them get motivated to do more than only a workshop or have a keynote.
Mm-hmm. I find, after having reviewed some of your videos and seen you speak, etc., that there's a sense of peace, and I don't mean as opposed to aggression. I mean as kind of I experience a sense of kind of global connection and peace that doesn't come with the cheesy 80s clip art when you're talking about how we are, you know. One of the things that I often say that I hope mirrors that is that it's not about not making judgments and assumptions. It's about recognizing you do, and that those biases make you feel safe and prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic. You should probably be responsible for that. Now, what you do with them, that could be problematic. So that's what you need to look at. So thank you very much for that. So next is my two favoriteest questions ever. So first one, I know, because you never know where they're going to come from. But first question is, what have you changed your mind about recently?
What I've changed my mind about is, and I'm not sure if I could call it changing my mind or shifting. I am in the middle right now of reframing my work so that more of my work will be in community rather than corporate. So more is going to be focused from a nonprofit perspective. And the reason that came about, and this shift has really happened over about the last 5 years, but I made a serious commitment last February, to start moving in that direction. I will continue to do what I'm doing and working with corporations and various organizations. However, much more of my energy and focus will be on community work as it relates to helping people know how to have a dialogue and how to listen to people whose opinions and beliefs are diametrically opposed to them. Because my belief is that one of the reasons we're living in a world of lack of civility and more and more loneliness, I heard another story about that this morning on the news, is because when things happen that are uncomfortable for you, when things happen to you in particular that are uncomfortable for you, and it comes from a person you have to deal with on a regular basis, very often you say nothing because you don't know how. And so my shift is to provide more opportunity and more education around a technique that I created a long time ago to teach people how to have a conversation, how to give feedback that feels uncomfortable, but when you learn how to language it, it won't be uncomfortable. So that's a major shift. I don't spend very much time anymore, even in my for-profit work, on building the business case. If you don't get it by now, then telling you more statistics are not going to cause you to finally get on the bus. And so I leave that to other people to do. That doesn't mean I don't use any research. I mean, I certainly use research and give them the sources so they can go read that research if they need to. But I want to move more quickly to, now we're here today, here's where we are, here's what we can do differently in order that your organization and or community can be more effective.
Absolutely. All right. What do you absolutely know?
What I absolutely know is that I was put on this planet to do this work. I feel so fortunate that I am doing work that is a calling for me. And I feel fortunate because there's so many people that go to work every day and hate their job. I can't imagine that. I only had one job in my whole life that I absolutely hated, and it was just a summer job during college. So I was able to quit that with no anxiety at all. But because, again, of things that have happened to me personally, I realized, okay, don't need to hit me over the head with a cosmic 2x4. I know I'm supposed to do this work, and I know I have to continue to refine the way that I do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. At the end, I like to do lightning round. So I have a product called Icebreaker Cards that are a bunch of questions, easy, intermediate, or deep, and you just answer them as quickly as possible. So you gave me 3 random numbers. First one is number 8, which is an easy question. What is the best gift that you've ever received for someone? What about the best gift you've ever given to someone?
The best gift I've ever given to someone is to my husband, who I've now been married to for 44 years. But for his one of his significant birthdays, I won't out him. I'm comfortable with my age, but I won't out how old he is. But several years ago, he's a very, very private person. And I know he's changed the lives of many people he encounters. So I snuck into his database and got emails to all the people that he knows and sent them a message as a surprise for his birthday to send 1 or 2 sentences about their thoughts about him. And then I created a memory bowl. It ended up being this gigantic thing. So I had them in many different colors, and I had the words or phrases or sentences, whatever, that they wrote on all of these little pieces of paper, and gave that to him as a birthday gift. And seeing his reaction was worth all the time and effort it took to put it together.
Wow, what a great gift.
It was pretty cool. The best gift I ever received was, now Jessica, you know that I call myself expressive because I cry easily, not emotional, expressive. So I'm feeling that at the moment. But the best gift that I received is my dad and I were able to really spend quality time together for 2 years after my stepmom died and he was living alone, even though we didn't live together because he was in New Jersey and I'm in North Carolina, but I was his primary caregiver, so to speak. So I took care of all of the things long distance to make sure he had all the services he needed. And I visited him frequently. And those times we were together meant the world to me, because when he passed, I felt that he and I had gotten to know each other in a way we didn't know before, and had talked about all the important things. I learned so much, and that is an intangible gift that I will take with me forever.
That's good. That made me all expressive. Number 10. Tell a time when you had some type of adventure that was out of the ordinary.
An adventure out of the ordinary. Well, yes. Okay, so real fast. It was my 3rd or 4th trip to South Africa, and I was there for 3 weeks. So over the weekends, I had free time, and I decided to go on a wine tasting tour. So I was by myself. So I'm on this bus, and there are other people that are mostly in couples or groups, and then there was me. And this Indian couple, their ethnicity is important to the story, an Indian couple, we had lunch together. They invited me to join them for lunch, and I mentioned I was going to be going to Durban. Well, it turned out that's where they live. So they invited me to come to their home for dinner. So I did all the safety kinds of things, and I knew it was going to be safe. I go to dinner thinking it was going to be just them. Well, it ended up being 20 people, and I was the guest of honor, having no idea that was going to be the case ahead of time. And that was clearly outside of anything I would have done, go to a stranger's house and then be there and end up being the guest of honor there, which was so much fun.
Oh, that's rad. Wow, that's cool. Number 9 is, if you were trapped in a TV show for 1 month, which show would you choose and why?
Oh my goodness. A TV show for a month. Oh, I know what it would be. Say Yes to the Dress. This is so not connected to the way people would see me, but lately I have fallen in love with that show. And I have no idea why I love the show so much, other than perhaps I could never in a million years imagine taking 7 or 8 people with me to help me pick out a wedding dress. I made my own dress, so there was no one. Now, my background was in home ec, so I knew what I was doing. But my point is, I would love to be stuck in that show for a month, not as a bride-to-be, but as one of the consultants that help them find dresses, because the happiness on their face when they know that is the dress is so wonderful. And to be able to help people find that feeling would be just, I think, so much fun. And I wouldn't be designing the dresses, just finding the ones that they want.
Oh, that's such a good answer. And I have not been answering the lightning round, so I'm going to answer this one too, though, because it's a similar off. People wouldn't expect the answer. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. I have to ask permission. It's your interview. So
on your show.
I would trap myself in fear factor.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Here's why. So I'm actually a pretty safety Sam kind of person. So like I understood when you said like you did the safety things to go to a stranger's house for dinner. I'm a rule follower, safety Sam person. And on fear factor, none of those crazy things are going to kill you, because that would be really terrible for the show.
Right.
So somehow you get to do all of these utterly terrifying things, but in my world, I know I'm at least not going to die.
Yes.
Like, I'll eat scorpions while diving off a high board. Like, I would never do that, but I would do that. Yeah. All right, great. That's
fun.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me and people watching this. If people wanted to learn more or get in touch with you, how would they do that?
So the easiest way would be to go to my website, ubuntuglobal.com. Another easy way to connect with me and be connected to some of the things that I'm doing is to go to thediversityadvantage.info, which is a collection of articles, not ones that I've written. I mean, sometimes I've written them, but they come from lots of folks. And then, of course, I'm all over social media on Facebook, Lenora Billings-Harris, or my business page is Diversity Coach. And that's where I will put more things specifically for learning around diversity, or my opinions about things that would be on that page. And the same is true for LinkedIn. I have Lenora Billings-Harris, and then I also have a business page on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lenora.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.